If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Eats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Decent Family of Podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Matt Joseph. So you know him better as Mid-Major Matt. He is going to be joining me, and we're going to be diving into these games that we've got for Friday, how he's been playing a lot of the futures market and just all of these conference tournaments in general. And we're going to be diving in on some of the teams that he likes this time of year and some of the teams that maybe he's a little bit more bearish on this time of year. Just some of the attributes that he's looking on, so many of these teams that he's looking to back and fade in these conference tournaments. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM. Naming does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And we did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but had a lot of fun with our college basketball slate on Thursday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
In terms of the two ranked teams in action, one was able to succeed and was able to get an easy cover in Arizona, and one fell in Washington State. Arizona, they were able to make quite light work out of UCLA, this by a count of 88-65, and this has been a bunch that has really been good against the spread all season long. For Arizona, they are now 20-10 against the spread, as for UCLA, it was looking like this team was picking up steam towards like late January, but now that is really gone away in terms of the momentum that they had. Arizona, they go 9-23 from three-point range. They win the turnover battle 10-9, and more importantly, they just continue to dominate on the glass. Keshad Johnson was the guy tonight that was able to really control things. 41-29, Arizona, they win that rebound battle. Caleb Love was able to throw in their 17 points, and for UCLA, Lazar Stefanovic and Dylan Andrews, they combined for 38 points, and nobody else helped them out. Meanwhile, with Washington State, they fall by kind of 74-68 to Washington, and for Washington State, they had a chance at being able to win the Pac-12 title. That is now gonzo, as for Washington State, they actually won the rebound battle in this one by kind of 44-34, but they just had a tough time knocking down shots. 4 of 24 from 3, 8 of 17 at the free throw line. Isaac Jones supplied 20 points, 10 rebounds, but past that, not a lot doing for them. And we did see a lot of teams of intrigue with regards to just some of your top and not so top cover teams in all of college basketball take the floor on Thursday as well, and quite a few of them are out there in the Big West. As you did see, Santa Barbara has been a team that has been pretty wretched all season long. They're now 9-16-1 against the spread. They get the job done, though, against Long Beach State. This by a count of 76-74. They've actually been a better road team than they have been a home team. And for Santa Barbara, they lose the turnover battle 18-12. They lose the rebound battle 34-28. But A.J. Mitchell just decided to have himself a night. 37 points, because 4 of 6 from three-point range. So look out below there. And a team that's been able to do a nice job of being able to cover a lot of spreads in UC Irvine. They're now 18-12 against the spread. They were laying between 23 and 23.5 points to Cal Poly. Cal Poly loses, but they're able to hold in there by a count of 82-68. So yay, verily there. Boo, verily for our DK Network Rita pick not coming through. And I vow to do better. This has been a rough little patch. I have taken 3 straight losses. Still a 70-52 mark for the season. I believe that this would still be my best mark ever, but we want to do better. And with UW Green Bay, they did not do us, right? 95-84, they lose to UW Milwaukee. As for Milwaukee, they only go 4 of 14 from 3, but went 27 of 35 at the free throw line. And for UW Green Bay, they lose the turnover battle by a count of 10-8. They lose the rebound battle 39-35, and just flat out BJ Freeman was the best player out there on the floor with 32 points, 8 boards, 5 assists. I believe he only had 1 turnover as well, but we did see a nice upset out there in the Horizon League. By the way, UW Green Bay closes the year 19-11 against the spread, unless if they go to one of these ancillary tournaments. But Cleveland State, nice upset over Youngstown State by a count of 82-70. The final is for Cleveland State, they go 8 of 16 from 3. Youngstown, they go 5 of 31 for distance. Just talk about a bad time to go cold. DJ Turner Burns had 17 points, 18 rebounds, but not enough to be able to get the team through there. And one of your top over teams in all of college basketball, guess what? They played another over. Wright State, they were the wrong side, but they are now 23 overs to 7 unders as far this season. We'll see if they make a postseason tournament, but Northern Kentucky, they are able to survive and advance in overtime 99-97. As for Wright State, they go 8 of 21 from 3-point range. Every one of their starters reached double figures, 4 of them at least 18 points, but Northern Kentucky, they had Marcus Warwick. He was able to give the team 35 points, goes 9 of 9 at the free throw line. As for Northern Kentucky, 18 of 24 at the charity stripe, 15 of 21 out of Wright State. And for Northern Kentucky, they did a very solid job of being able to play straight up in the turnover department. You knew that they would have a little bit of a tough time on the glass, but still, they were able to persevere, get the job done, and they are going to be advancing in their conference tournament. The trend I was looking at in terms of Arch Madness Missouri Valley Conference tournament unders, that continues to be relatively hot. The only reason why we got an over on Thursday was because you had a double overtime game take place between Southern Illinois and UIC. UIC was able to pull that one out by a count of 84-82, and for Southern Illinois, this has been a relatively good cover team all season long, just could not find a way to be able to pull this one out, as UIC 7 of 20 from 3-point range. And for Southern Illinois, they do go 13 of 35 from 3-point range. Xavier Johnson, who has been the man all season long for this team, 4 of 7 from 3, 27 points, 7 assists, and AJ Ferguson, 14 rebounds in this one. As Southern Illinois, they do lose a rebound battle 42-40, but they won the turnover battle 10-7. But for UIC, they overcome shooting 9 of 16 at the free throw line, with Isaiah Rivera being able to supply 28 big points in this one. So they survive, they advance. You also saw being able to survive and advance on Thursday as well, the Belmont Bruins, who have been a little bit rough this year, but for Belmont, they take down a Valparaiso team that surprisingly was 18-13 against the spread to end the season. You wouldn't know it by watching this game, as they got lambasted 86-61, and quite frankly, it wasn't even that close for Valparaiso. They go 6 of 33 from 3. Good news for Valparaiso, they won the rebound battle 50-44, but makes no difference when you just can't throw the ball in the basket, as Jerome Palm had a double-double. But for Belmont, 22 points out of Wichita, that gets them into the next round. And then we did see Evansville and Illinois State play a 59-53 slog, but none of that was as bad as Murray State being able to put up just 35 points in their loss against Missouri State, 60-35 being the final of Murray State. They closed the season 13-18 against the spread. We do have to talk about this as well. I've never seen anything quite like it, but you're going to have Pacific for the second time in 3 seasons close out the year with the worst against the spread record in all of college basketball, considering how many teams there are in D1 college basketball. That's just mind-blowing, as this Pacific team, they go 6-26 straight up. I believe that they had a few non-D1 games that were not counted against the spread, but they're going to close the season 6-24 against the spread. This after during the 2021-22 season, they were 4-24-2 against the spread, as Pepperdine was up 56-9 at the half and won 102-43. I mean, 5 Greg Petersons could have played that first half that Pacific did, and I suck. Pepperdine, 7 of 19 from 3-point range. Pepperdine wins the rebound battle 50-26. They win the turnover battle 16-12. They shoot 60% from the floor. And for Pacific, they went 14 of 56 from the floor. Judson Martindale gives you 12 points, and golly, this was just bad. I'm going to use my Wisconsinism. Cripes. Not good. Not good. For Colgate, this has been a bunch that it's had a little bit of a tough time covering this year. They get the win, but no cover against Holy Cross. 81-64, the final for Colgate. 16-14-1 against the spread. Typically expect a little bit better as they survive and advance in the Patriot League tournament. And so does Lehigh, who's now 18-10 against the spread. 76-61. They take down a Lafayette team that was a relative upstart in the conference. And for Lehigh, they went 13 out of 20 from 3-point range, with having 22 big points out of Burke Chabur. Hopefully I said that correctly, but he came up with a nice productive performance there. And for Bucknell, they're now 19-13 against the spread. They've been surging here late. They take down the American Eagles, who didn't sell them blue jeans. Instead, they sold them a win, 80-57, the final, with Bucknell going 9-25 from 3 in American. They shot 34% from the floor and 6 of 25 from three-point range. This podcast always stays away from real controversial stuff and everything like that, but currently the UAB versus Temple game is being flagged for apparently some, shall we say, perhaps not so great situations with regards to the sports betting aspect of it. 172 the final. The situation is still a little bit murky as things are going on, if there is point shaving or something like that, but we saw UAB be a 2.5 point favorite. This ballooned up to being about a 7.5 to an 8 point line. I believe the offshore site Buckeye just completely removed this game for a little bit of time as well, and I can tell you, I thought that we got great value with UAB at -2.5. I was not sure why the number moved. If I had to bet it late, I probably would have taken the Temple plus 7.5 plus 8. Fortunately, I took the overnight, and we'll just take it, because for UAB, they went 10 of 18 from three-point range. Certainly, that was not really fixed, but for Temple, they got completely just plowed on the glass. 41-19. You did have off the bench 20 points from Zion Stanford, who's been averaging about 6 points per contest, but for the Temple starters, they combined for 27 points. It just gave a really bad effort. So, very interesting, to say the least, what happens there. I will stay out of it, and I will let you make out of it what you will. And for Wisconsin, they get the job done against Rutgers, 78-66, and it has been a horrible last month and a half for this Wisconsin team, but ding dong, the witch is dead. They get their third straight up win since the beginning of the month of February, and they were getting plowed in this game early on. Rutgers actually got up 22-13. They were up in this game in the second half, 47-40, and then, like me at Rutgers, man, that was a rough last stretch in this one, as Rutgers now 13-17 against the spread. Wisconsin 12-17-1 against the spread, but Seaver Crawl, nice double-double, 17 points, 11 rebounds out of him, so they're able to do a solid job of being able to get the job done out there in the Sun Belt tournament as well. We saw some very interesting action out there. Texas State, they take down Southern Miss 75-59, and for those that were commenting that I didn't think that the experiment of one Mr. Andre Curbelo was going to work out, I say ha-ha, as Andre Curbelo, 10 points, 7 assists, 4 turnovers. That is the Andre Curbelo experience, ladies and gentlemen, and I think that it's going to be one and done in Southern Miss. I think they can come back for another year, but man, that did not seem to work out well for anyone, as for Texas State, they did turn the ball over 15 times, but off the bench, Mr. Horn, Dante Horn, was able to supply the team with 20 points. So Texas State, they're able to move on. They're able to advance. Also out there in the Sun Belt, you've got a very good against the spread team in Troy that is going to be waiting in the next round. But this bunch, they close the season 15-12-2 against the spread. Coastal Carolina, they lose, they don't cover against Louisiana by a count of 80-66. Too bad Old Dominion season's done, as they were just, man. They went 7-23-1 against the spread, and Marshall, they're now 12-19 against the spread, but they're able to survive an advance against Georgia State, 86-74 the final, as Marshall went just an unseasonably hot 14 of 29 from 3. Georgia State went 10 of 19 from distance. That's just catching a falling knife if you, like me, had the under in that spot. I mean, my goodness, neither of these teams could really miss from three-point range, and then just taking a look at some of the demonstrative teams to the over and the under that we saw on Thursday, and a pair of teams that I've already recapped. Colgate and Rutgers have been two of your top under teams in all of college basketball, but both played overs on Thursday. Colgate, 20 unders to 11 overs thus far this season. Meanwhile, Rutgers, they are now at 20 unders to just 10 overs, but Western Illinois, they've been a good under team all season long, and they played yet another under out there in the Ohio Valley Conference Tournament. Now 19 unders to just 9 overs for them this far this season, and for Western Illinois, they just barely outlast Tennessee State. This was a line of about 3, so they don't get the cover, but they're able to get the 61-59 outright win, a game of which was just an almighty slog throughout. Quinlan Bennett was able to supply Western Illinois with a big giant 18 points, 10 rebounds, as for Western Illinois, they go just 3 of 17 from 3, 33 and 16 of 29 at the free throw line. But for Tennessee State, 5 of 18 from three-point range, 8 of 11 at the free throw line. And for Western Illinois, they win the rebound battle 52-36. Added off the fact that they lost a turnover battle 19-12. So that was a very intriguing game to say the least. And out there in the Big West, UC Davis has been a very good under team all season long, and for our good friends in UC Davis, they were able to go on the road and get the job done against UC San Diego. This by a count of 70-63 as Elijah Pepper, he peppered in there 28 points, and this was just thorough domination throughout from UC Davis. This was a closing total of 140.5, so you're able to get the under there, and UC San Diego has actually been one of your better cover rate teams in all of college basketball. For UC San Diego this far this season, they have gone against the spread 18-11, not quite the same as CSUN, who was won 21-9, and they were not in action on Thursday. But all in all, very interesting performance to say the least. And you've got a Hawaii team that's now 12-17 against the spread that was also out of action as well. But in terms of what we're seeing trend-wise in college basketball, we have been seeing a lot of overs all season long, but now with the conference tournaments taking hold, that over rate is starting to go down just a little bit, as overs are still in the lead on unders, 1,645 overs to 2,548 unders. That's a 50.9% hit rate to the over, and home underdogs just continue to get slaughtered. 709, 751, and 24 against the spread. I can't remember home underdogs ever having this brutal of a run for an entire season. Meanwhile, if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, home underdogs 44, 53, and 2 against the spread, and unders hitting at 51.5%, 171 unders to 162 overs. So that's what we're seeing right now in college basketball, and that's what we all got on Thursday. Now let's turn it forward to Friday and just these conference tournaments and how to gauge them with Matt Josephs, better known as Mid-Major Matt. Does great work over at ESPN Radio in Richmond, FTN Network, and so much more. He joins me next right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Peters, and now a part of the Beast Family Podcast. And we're back to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Peterson, now part of the Beast Family Podcast. It is great to be joined by this man, as our good friend Matt Josephs, better known as Mid-Major Matt, does such a good job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that he is involved in so many different things, getting set for the baseball season, does great work on the college football front, and he's been doing a great job looking at this great game of college basketball all season long. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Mid-Major Matt altogether, and you're able to catch his radio show out there in Richmond, Virginia. He does a great job with the show Border to Border out there in ESPN Radio in Richmond, FTN Network, and so much more. And Matt, always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I am doing better than currently the Pacific Tigers are doing, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as we're recording this, air down 58-9. That is startling, to say the least. Actually, they took a bucket off the board, 56-9. I guess a little bit more respectable, but I mean, good gosh almighty, and just how do you take a look at something like that? Because I think it's a firm reminder of just how crazy this college basketball season has been. A Pacific team that went on the road and knocked off Cal, and this is not like it's ancient history or anything like that. Pacific had a lead over Gonzaga mere weeks ago at the half in a game a few weeks ago, and then there they were on Thursday, down 56-9 at the half against Pepperdine.
And the funny thing is, Orleans Arena has traditionally very soft rims in terms of there's been plenty of points. This was a game last year that was played between these two, and it had a lot of scoring in it and a lot of the same people as well. And it just kind of shows you neutral courts, weird things happen. That's what makes this fun to handicap, but it also makes it very hard because weird results will happen. Teams will make runs that shouldn't make runs. It's like some of the teams decide to just be bad during the regular season and save it all up for the conference tournament. So you do your best and you try and figure things out, but you just know that your handicapping may be right. It's just some of these teams and these weird things happen on these neutral courts.
Yep, it certainly can from time to time happen where you get oddities like this. Fortunately, I was on the side of Pepperdine on this one, so it was my least sweaty bet of the entire year. I was very, very happy about that, but my goodness gracious. I mean, that was just absolutely insane. And with that as a little bit of a springboard, how do you play a lot of these conference tournaments? Are you a little bit more of a game-to-game guy, or are you taking a little bit more of a look at the futures market, trying to grab some long shots to be able to make a run.
Yeah, I'm trying to get some futures in, and right now I'm currently holding, and I'm very happy that Eastern Kentucky got knocked out because I'm holding an Austin Peay ticket. So I'm at least hoping for them to get to the championship game, and then depending upon their opponent and the situation, the line, maybe I hedge out a little bit. I have a nice 20, I think it's 20-1 on Austin Peay. I have a nice ticket on Milwaukee in the horizon. Both of those teams are playing today, so hopefully by the time everybody listens to this, they're still around. But I like to find a couple of long shots here and there. I also have Furman as a long shot because I thought Furman, when they're all healthy, they're a pretty solid team in that conference. And then I also have a small bet on Troy in the Sun Belt. I'm hoping not, as a guy who loves JMU basketball, that JMU wins this thing and they can get in the NCAA tournament. But we're just trying to find some long shots. And another important thing is when it comes to finding the long shots and future stuff, have multiple outs, have multiple books, have multiple options, because I'll tell you this, my Austin Peay future was priced all over the place in a bunch of different books, and the number that I got was the best one. So definitely having multiple outs. With regards to game, you kind of look at the two things during the regular season. You look at, what time it is, what the crowd situation's like, what this building is like. There's all sorts of things to consider. So it's almost slightly easier to get yourself a future and then maybe hedge out of it if you're a little worried about it later on in the tournament.
Oh, no doubt about it. Like, I take a look at a team that's out here in my neck of the woods, UNLV. They are always priced so differently at these Vegas books rather than when you take a look at, say, your FanDuel, say your DraftKings, these East Coast books, they're going to price them completely differently because they're getting a different crowd of bettors are taking a look at than those that are out here in lovely Las Vegas. So always be shopping around. I think that that's the best advice that you could do. And if you don't feel good about a futures ticket, a money line rollover, in my opinion, is always a pretty good option as well. As joining me on the show, we do have Matt Joseph. You know him better as Big Major Matt, and he's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly we'll dive into more of these conference tournaments in a minute, but I do want to get your thoughts on this game. It's the VCU versus Dayton game. We every Friday get like 1 or 2 A10 games, and I know that out there in your neck of the woods in Richmond, Virginia, VCU is a hot button of conversation right now. Find this total between 138.5 and 139, with Dayton being about an 8 to an 8.5 point favorite. How do you evaluate this one? Just because last time these two teams played, neither team got to 50, and certainly I think that both teams are going to be able to get past 50 in this one, but I just feel like this total of 138.5 to 139 seems way too high for two slow teams that do a great job of guarding the three-point arc.
Yeah, and it's so weird because every time I've seen Dayton, it's pretty funny. You can notice when I've seen Dayton because it's been a lot of their losses. I have not been that impressed with them. They have Deron Holmes, who's one of the best players in the country. But, that Javon Bennett injury, and that's something certainly we want to look at as we get closer to this game because he got hurt against Loyola Chicago. And then, of course, did not play against St. Louis. They didn't need him against St. Louis because St. Louis is bad. But Dayton doesn't play a lot of guys. And so that's a bit of a concern here. And that certainly helps out with your under because that means this pace is going to be a little slower. And then I don't know what to get from VCU because I've watched them play a lot of times. I was at the St. Joe game when they were at home, and the first half they couldn't do anything, and then the second half they looked like one of the best offenses in the country. It's one of those things where they're still trying to figure things out. We also don't know about the injury situation. Max Shulga didn't play last game, and he's an important piece to this offense, and they're used to not having everybody. It feels like every game somebody is out. Zeb Jackson has missed some time. Obviously, Joe Bamasiel didn't play at the beginning of the season. Sean Bairstow was injured in the beginning of the season. It really goes as Joe Bamasiel goes. If he can spark the offense a little bit, I think VCU can get to that total, maybe around 60, 62-ish or something like that. I do like your lean to the under here, though. If there's not a lot of fouling, which we know VCU can do at times, I think this one seems like an under.
Yeah, both of these teams well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. So even if you get some moderately solid scoring in this one, I just don't know if you get enough possessions for and over. So I think that that's going to be interesting to take a look at it, to your point as well. Lots of injuries on this front as well. As joining me on the show, we do have Matt Joseph, better known as Big Major Matt, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Matt, something that we notice, and it's something that we notice every single year. I don't know why people were surprised by it, but not a lot of scoring in the Missouri Valley Conference Tournament on Thursday. A whole lot of breaks, a whole lot of unders, and right now we're doing this as we don't know the matchups quite yet for Drake and Bradley. The front two matchups, they're set up with Indiana State and Missouri State and Belmont versus Northern Iowa. But how are you playing the Missouri Valley Conference Tournament and these games in general? Since I know that you've been on Indiana State, throughout the entirety of the season. And if there is going to be a little bit of vulnerability for Indiana State, I do think it might be this tournament, because I just noticed year in and year out, the Enterprise Center, it feels like, is one of the worst arenas that you're going to find in college basketball for jump shooting teams.
Yeah, obviously, I have a nice 95-1 future on Indiana State to make the Final Four. I got that, about a month and a half ago, so I'm hoping they make the tournament. And if they do lose, I would like to have them lose, in the final, maybe to Drake, and then they both get in, and hopefully that is the case. But the team that worries me the most in terms of Indiana State, and the team that's kind of off the beaten path a little bit, is Belmont. I mean, Belmont's offense is fantastic. And when they're all healthy and Jacoby Gillespie's playing well and things like that, they got Kate Tyson and Davidson as well. I mean, Belmont's offense can match up with a lot of teams and certainly can match up with Northern Iowa. The problem is they play no defense. I mean, you look at a game against Indiana State, it's just going to be a really high-scoring game, or at least it would be, depending upon the arena. It was 94-64 and 78-72 during the regular season. Belmont's offense can match anybody. The problem is their defense is just so bad. So even if they play a tiny bit of defense, they could make Indiana State sweat a little bit, and maybe Belmont's the team in the championship game instead of the Sycamores.
Yep, and I do think that is going to be an interesting game to take a look at, with Belmont taking on a Northern Iowa team that they were pretty wretched with their defense towards the beginning part of the season, but they were able to wise up. They were able to play a little bit better towards back half of the season. That was a bit encouraging from them, and I do think that we've got ourselves a lot of intrigue with regards to that tournament. And then we do have a few other ones that are going to be starting up on this Friday as well. The OVC is going to be continuing to go on. We don't know the matchups quite yet, so hard to be able to dive in there. But we've got the CAA and the Southern Conference. I don't think any of these teams playing in the first round of the CAA or the Southern Conference are going to be able to make a run to the final. But anything that you're taking a look at with regards to those two conference tournaments, whether it be the games for Friday or perhaps a future in any of those tournaments?
I mean, VMI and team total overs against VMI. I mean, Keydet's defense has been pretty bad. It's just the only thing obviously, look, we're playing this game on a neutral court. We're playing it in Asheville, North Carolina. So you maybe take the total down a little bit because of neutral court sort of things. But you always have to look at the opposing defense, because VMI's offense is okay. They do some things decently. So if you think that VMI can contribute at all to any sort of total, I wouldn't be opposed to taking an over in that game. If you don't like the defense they're going up against, or you do like it in terms of that you think that you're going to slow them down, I mean, taking the team total for East Tennessee State is one way to go, because we know VMI provides very little resistance, and it's not like they're going to start playing defense now. They're going to continue to play the system that they use. Mercer's also intriguing, because Mercer's had some interesting results as the season's gone along. The Citadel has kept some teams close, but you look at Mercer, they've won 4 of their last 5. They beat Sanford, they beat Furman. If there was a team that could make things at least interesting, you're not going to probably see somebody go 4 wins in 4 days, but Mercer could be that team because they have such success against the top of the conference.
And for Mercer as well, they played a little bit better towards the back half of the season as well. I felt like they were able to get on a nice little bit of a run, so I do think that that's going to be helpful for them as well. And they're a team that, to your point, I think could be a little bit intriguing moving forward. As joining me on the show, we do have Matt Josephs, better known as Mid-Major Matt, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And when it comes to some of the other games that we're going to be getting on Friday, we obviously have a lot of conference tournament action, but we've got a lot of individual games when it comes to the MAC, the one with 1A. We've got more of the 2A MAC games for Thursday, and we've got a little bit in terms of like Wichita State, Tulane, Boise St versus San Diego State. Are there any other games for this Friday card that you really have your eye on that you're going to be betting, or maybe not even betting, but just taking a look at seeing how these teams are coming into form when it comes to like the MAC tournament or like a Boise State going into the Mountain West tournament?
I mean, last year and previous years, I dreaded this game as a guy who supports Toledo and has made money off of Toledo and enjoys watching Toledo. I've dreaded their games against Kent State. Of course, that was when Sincere Carey was there and they had a lot more talent. It feels like this Kent State team is down. We have to remember for some of these games, if you have a chance to make the NIT, margin of victory for the net is going to help. So you might see some of these teams pour it on a little bit more. And Toledo, for them, it's going to be all about getting frustrations out from losing to Kent State in the past. And I really hope this is the year Toledo wins the MAC, because they have a really good offense. They play no defense, and I know it'd be a high-scoring game, but I think they deserve it after the past couple seasons when they've had some heartbreaking losses in the MAC. And I'll be interested to see what Akron does. Akron has played bad down the stretch. You don't lose at home to Eastern Michigan. That just doesn't happen. And then, some of these other games, they just have not played very well. So I'd like to see if Akron can get back on target a little bit. And then you look at Tulane. I mean, look, Tulane is another one of these teams that they play a lot of offense and they play no defense. And I've seen Wichita State several times, and I haven't really been that impressed with Wichita State. So it's an interesting short number here, but I think they're also saying, well, Wichita State might be able to score on these guys. I did see Wichita State lose twice to Temple this season, though, so that kind of downgrades them in my book.
Yeah, with Wichita State, they're a team that's relatively solid on the glass, but the offense that we saw with Oral Roberts as Paul Mills took over the program just has not been there thus far this season. Then they go up against a Tulane team that they've got a really nice starting five, but they're a team that doesn't have a lot of depth that plays up tempo. And how do you take a look at a team like a Tulane? Because we're talking about teams that cannot make a run in a conference tournament. And Tulane, I feel like, is one of those textbook teams in the American where they might be able to pull off a win, maybe even two in their conference tournament, but that's the sort of team that I wouldn't want to be betting on to make a run, because when you've got a combination of playing up tempo and not a lot of depth, when you're playing like 3 games in 3 days, in some cases 4 games in 4 days, those are the teams that I really want to avoid.
Well, and especially if they play a physical team like North Texas, or if they play some of the more physical teams in the conference. We already know, I mean, Tulane's one of the worst rebounding teams in the country. They're 359 in offensive rebounding. They're 319 in defensive rebounding, offensive rebounding as well, preventing offensive rebound. So if you find a tougher team that's going to pound them inside and everything like that in the paint, I think Tulane's going to struggle. You look at a North Texas who wants to slow games down and make it ugly, a Charlotte, things like that, and Memphis wants to run with them, and maybe Tulane could beat them in a game that you want to run them back and forth. But if you're one of these slow teams, Tulane is going to struggle a little bit because they want to go and they want to use their athleticism and their talent against you, and they're just not going to be able to do that against some of those squads.
No, they're not going to be able to, and it's a Tulane team that, just to your point, I think that they might be able to do well for like one game if they get the right matchup, but if they get the wrong matchup or if they're looking to make a run, just a team that I don't want any part of. But what I do want a part of is great chats with you, Matt, because you do such an excellent job taking a look at this great game of college basketball. And you, much like myself, get right into baseball mode when college basketball ends as well. I know that we're both very excited for that. We're both pumped up for the NCAA tournament, so let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yep, at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter, and I do some write-ups for FTNBets.com, and that's where my K-Prop stuff will be when baseball comes around and my NCAA tournament selections, and we'll make sure to post anything, all the links on my website. And as I always say, feel free to ask me questions because I know there's certain things that Greg doesn't do, whether it's futures or first halves or things like that. I will be more than happy to answer any questions anybody has because we all have one goal, and that's just to beat the books and make some money.
Absolutely, and Matt does such a good job on that front, and every single time he joins the show, always lends such impeccable insight. So big thanks to Matt for joining me on Coast to Coast Superstar, part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we eat some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It's always great to be joined by Matt Josephs, better known as Mid-Major Matt, who does such an excellent job taking a look at this great game of basketball that we all know and love. Every single time he joins the show, he lends such good insights, and I know that he is all prepped up, primed, ready to go for these conference tournaments, and so am I. So it's great to be able to chat with him about that and so much more. Big thanks to Matt for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some make shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GNet_D1, and we are going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first, and then the games with 6 digits. Those are involving those smaller conferences. You're going to be seeing things like the Big South tournament is going to be at the bottom, and I really think that that's the main one, the Big South tournament. That is going to be at the bottom. Meanwhile, it goes in games that are not a part of conference tournaments, and then tip time by conference tournaments. So Missouri Valley Conference is going to be first since it's the earliest to tip off, and then the Coastal Conference, the CAA, the South Southern Conference, and you go down the list from there. So let's get things started with 851, 852 on the betting board. Akron, it's the road to face off against Western Michigan, and Western Michigan does find themselves as an underdog of 8.5 points. Your total on this game, it is 138, and I did sell Western Michigan as an 8-point dog here at the 8.5. That is going to be my buy point on them. For Akron, they are going to be able to dominate the glass, as you've got Enrique Freeman, who's right now leading all of college basketball with north of 13 rebounds per game. He's able to give you 18 plus points. He's able to pop it relatively well from three, but keep in mind, this is an Akron team that just a few days ago, they lost against Eastern Michigan as north of a 20-point favorite. They just don't appear to be in the world's greatest form, and you just haven't been able to get the three-point shooting out of Ali Ali they expected, as Ali Ali last season, while he was over at Butler, had a little bit of a rough go of it, but 2 seasons ago, when he was back at Akron, he was a north of 40% three-point shooter, now shooting about 27% from distance. Now, in a little bit more of a nip-and-tuck game, each of your top 5 scorers shoot at least 72% of the free throw line, but if you're in that sort of a nip-and-tuck game, you're not going to get the cover anyway. And for Western Michigan, they hold their own on the glass. They're a top 150 team with regards to their rebound rate. You've got someone like Titus Wright, who's been able to give you about 4.5 boards per contest. Anthony Crump, Old Lobsiger, they've been able to combine for about 12.5 rebounds per game. And then you got the 7-footer in Javonte Brown, who's been a little bit more of an offensive force down low. Western Michigan, certainly not a great shooting team in general. They shoot 34.5% from distance, just 62% at the free throw line, but they do have someone that's able to provide you with a good presence as a dominant scorer in Seth Hubbard, who's been able to give you 14 points per contest, going up against an Akron team that's still a top 100 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And Akron overall has been okay with regards to their offense. They only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest, so they do a relatively clean job there, and they are a team that does a better job of being able to guard the three-point line than Western Michigan, as Akron right now is allowing teams to shoot from three-point range overall for the season about 29.7% at home. That goes up to 31.9% away from home, a top 30 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, Western Michigan, they're about 192nd in all of college basketball. That's about 32.7% at home. So I do think that Western Michigan going to be able to do an okay job of holding in there, as nobody outside of Enrique Freeman for this Akron team really gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, having a little bit of versatility with Owen Lobsinger shooting 38.5% from three-point range. I think it'll be just enough for Western Michigan to be able to hold lively against an Akron team that does seem to be scuffling a little bit down the stretch for this Akron team. The offense has come and gone, scoring 67 points for fear in 3 of the last 5 games, going up against a Western Michigan team that in regulation they have now given up 73 points for fear in each of their last 5. So did something total 135, looking at the under, and I'm going to be looking to take the points with Western Michigan. 853, 854 on the betting board. Toledo plays those to Kent State. Kent State, an underdog of 7.5 points. So on this game is 153. I set Toledo as a 6-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Kent State. It's been a rough year for Kent State. After last season, they were one of the more dominant teams in all of college basketball in terms of their defense. This year it's been quite a bit of a drop-off. They lose Sincere Carey, so they lose their ability to be able to carry over all of those turnovers that they were able to force a season ago. They're now 176th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but strangely, they're actually giving up 2.1 points fewer per 100 possessions on the road rather than at home, and this is still a Toledo team that's absolutely awful with their defense. They're giving up more points per possession at home rather than on the road. They're actually giving up about 0.3 of a point more per possession when they are at home rather than away. And when it comes to the Toledo team, you know that you're going to be able to get good, solid offense out of them. 37th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but only seeing a bump of about 5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. And this has been a Kent State unit that hasn't been amazing with their offense. They're about 137th in terms of points scored per possession, but do have someone in Jalen Sullinger who's done a solid job, giving you 15 points, shoots 40% from three-point range. Giovanni Santiago was having to take over those point guard roles for Sincere Carey. He was struggling towards the beginning part of the season, but has really been able to cut down on those turnovers towards back half of the season. As a matter of fact, he's had just 4 turnovers in the team's last 5 games, so he's running things very cleanly there. Kent State as a whole, they shoot 35.8% from 3 and north of 76% at the free throw line, so things have been trending in the right direction for them. And while the defense has been a little bit more lackadaisical, it has been coming on strong a little bit more recently, giving up 70 points for fear in regulation in 3 of the last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Toledo bunch that has been hot and cold in terms of their offense. 72 points or fewer scored in 3 of their last 5 games. They still do have some nice 3-point shooters, as you've got a guy in Dante Maddox who's been able to shoot 40% from distance with about 15.5 points per contest. And then Raheem Moss, Tyler Cochran, they combine for about 30 points per contest, with Cochran shooting 36.5% from the outside. But Toledo, much like a lot of years, they really don't have a lot of depth. They've got 4 separate guys that give you at least 12.5 points per contest. You've got 2 ancillary pieces that give you north of about 5.5 points per game. And then outside of that, you really don't have any other producers on the team. Toledo does a nice job keeping it clean with only turning the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. They shoot 76% at the free throw line. But that said, I do think that Kent State going to be able to do enough to be able to hold in there. It's Kent State 3-point shooting defense that isn't quite the same as it was a season ago, but still Kent State in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 31.8% from the outside when they're away from home. Toledo well outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That's up to 36% at home. So I do think that Kent State going to be able to get some points upon the board and be able to match what Toledo is able to do on offense and hang in there. I set my line at 6. I'm going to be willing to take the 7.5 with Kent State and did set my total at 154, so you're at the 153. Also going to be going with the over 855, 856 on the betting board. Central Michigan is going to be playing OC Eastern Michigan, and Eastern Michigan is an underdog of 10.5 to 11 points. Your total on this game is anywhere between 128.5 and 129. Set my line at 9.5. I am going to be willing to take the points with Eastern Michigan. It's been a sad, deplorable season for them, but the one thing that they do have going for them is that they've got the top scorer in this game in Ty Acuff, who's been able to give you a little bit north of 20 points per contest. He does a nice job of being able to contribute with regards to just being able to get the offense going in general. They don't have a lot down low in terms of rebounding, but it's not like the Central Michigan team is necessarily lighting the world on fire on the glass either. You've got Brian Taylor, who's saying 6'6". He's been able to supply the team with about 7 rebounds per game, but for Eastern Michigan, a big kryptonite for them is their ranking of 271st with regards to their rebound rate, but I mean, it's not like Central Michigan is doing a whole heck of a lot better at 233rd, and while you do have a nice do-it-all player in Anthony Pritchard who's done solid work giving the team about 13.5 to 14 points, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists per game, this is a Central Michigan team as well outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They only shoot 30.5% from 3. Derek Butler has come on strong, shooting about 42% from the outside, and then you've also been able to get about 40% 3-point shooting as well out of Aiden Rubio. He's been able to give the team about 7 points per contest as well, but this is a Central Michigan team that's very hamstrung with their offense, especially with them being a low-tempo team that turns the ball over a little bit over 12 times per contest, and also in a nip-and-tuck game where this game might come down to free throws with regards to cover, they shoot 66.3%. The free throw line outside the top 300 with that regard. And additionally, for Eastern Michigan, while they do a lot of things wrong, they're about 85th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Need a little bit of help around Ty Acuff with regards to the offense in front of things, but it's not like Central Michigan do much either, and they're a team that ranks 48th in the country in terms of their opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, that going down to 20.6% when they're at home. So I do think that's going to be a little bit difficult for both of these teams to score, but that said, I do think that we went a little bit too far on this. I did set my total at a 133.5. You still do have a pair of teams that are ranking well outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 2 brutally bad offenses, but that said, you've got a guy in Ty Acuff that I think is going to be able to put Eastern Michigan on his back, and I do think that both teams going to be able to exceed the really 65 that you need to be able to get this total over. So my total 133.5, looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Eastern Michigan, made them a 9.5 point underdog. Here comes the DK Network right pick. Hopefully we can get online with this one. 857, 858 on the card. It is Dayton. They are going to be playing against VCU. VCU is a 7.5 point underdog. This opened up at 8.5. Total on this game is 138, and I do agree with this move down from 8.5 to 7.5, but that said, my right up here is going to be on this total under. Last time these two teams played, neither team was able to get to 50 points. I mean, it was just an almighty slug for both of these teams, and I think that both teams are going to be able to exceed 50, but you've got two really slow teams going into Thursday. VCU 293rd in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game. Dayton 348th, and for VCU, they actually play with fewer possessions per game away from home rather than at home. You got a pair of teams that have really locked it down from 3-point range as well. The Dayton bunch is 27th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. VCU is 17th, but that ascends all the way to 5th, allowing opponents to shoot less than 20.5% from 3-point range when they're away from home. Now, this is a Dayton team that overall is 4th in all of college basketball with regards to a 3-point shooting percentage, but do have to feel like the offense might take a little bit of a fall off here with Javon Bennett currently being out of the fold, dealing with injury. He's been one of the main facilitators for this bunch. Now, you do have a Dayton team that's coming off of a 100-point expose a few nights ago, but I think that speaks more to St. Louis than anything else, and you've got a VCU team that has been very consistent with their defense all season long, and it's been an offense that as well has been a little bit touch and go with VCU in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, a top 70 team in all of college basketball, but they've been dealing with a few ailments of their own, as Max Scholga has really been the lone man of consistency for the team. He's been able to supply them with about 15 points per contest, but even he missed a game in that game against Duquesne. He's a little bit questionable for this one. Seb Jackson has been in and out of the fold. Should be good to go. 3.5 assists per contest, and Sean Barisau has been a walking injury all season long, but he's been back out there. He's been able to supply the team with about 10.5 points per contest for a VCU team that stunningly actually has a better rebound rate in this game. Now, you've got the more dominant player in Dayron Holmes for Dayton, 20 points, 8 boards. He's able to pop it from three-point range, and then gotta love what Nate Santos brings to the table with about 12 points, 6 half boards. He shoots 41% for 3, and as a matter of fact, for Dayton, each of their top 4 scorers do shoot at least 37.8% from the outside. Both of these teams relatively solid in terms of the turnover battle as well. VCU now turning the ball over a little bit over 12 times per contest. That's a bit of an issue, while Dayton, they are only turning the ball over about 10.2 times per contest. That's the top 50 mark in all of college basketball. But like I mentioned, with Bennett currently being someone that is dealing with a bit of an injury, I do think that is a little bit of a hamperance for the Dayton team. Probably going to see a little bit more Enoch Cheeks as a result, and I do think that you get another low-scoring, just defense-oriented game with a pair of teams that, by the way, they really like to take their threes. Dayton is taking 46.4% of their field goal attempts at home from 3. That's 22nd highest in all of college basketball. VCU, 43.8% of their shots away from home. They come from three-point range, 36th in the country, with both of these teams really locking that down from 3. I think that you get a low-scoring slog, and I do think that VCU going to be able to hang in this game. So my write-up here is going to be on the under. I did set my total at a 133.5, and with VCU, I made them a 5.5 point dog. So taking a look at the points and my write-up, that is going to be on this total under 859, 860 on the betting board. Bowling Green is going to be playing us to Ball State, and Bowling Green does find themselves as a favorite. You're going to be laying anywhere between 5 and 5.5 points total on this game, between 143 and 142, and I did set my total at a 146. I do like this total over. It has been a Ball State unit that has been having a tough time guarding the three-point line all season long, 254th in all of college basketball in that regard, and Bowling Green at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot 38.7% per 3. That is a bottom 75 mark in all of college basketball, and for Bowling Green, as a result, I could only make them a 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. With Bowling Green, they have taken on the entity of their coach in Todd Simon. They've been playing much more up-tempo as the season has been going along, and for this bunch, I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job winning that rebound battle, as you've got a pair of guys in Jason Spurgeon along with Rashawn Agee, who are combining for 15.5 rebounds per game, and Ball State isn't going to be able to quite match up with that, though. For Ball State, you've been able to get really good production out of Mr. Bashar Jihad, who's been able to do a nice job giving you 19 points, 8 boards, is able to shoot in the low 40s from three-point range, and Ball State, even though they do give up a lot of open threes, they've done a good job of being able to pop them themselves, shooting 36.5% from three-point range. Out of your top 5 scorers, they all shoot at least 34.8% from 3, and all but one of them at least 36.3% from the outside. And it's for a team, though, that is turning the ball over about 12 times per contest. Jalen Anderson, their main facilitator, with 4.5 assists per game. He does give out about 3 turnovers per contest. He and Jihad actually combined for 6 turnovers per contest, so a little bit of an issue there. And for Ball State, they are going to be outgunned down low with Bowling Green. This team ranks in the top 130 in terms of the rebound rate. Meanwhile, for Ball State, they're more around about 169th, but I do think that Ball State going to do a nice job of holding in there. They're not completely decimated on the glass or anything like that, and this has been a Bowling Green team that has really struggled from the outside all season long. Shooting is collective 29.5% from three-point range, with that being the main kryptonite. Ball State, good matchup for the Cardinals. So I did set my lineup for, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Ball State, and do think that this is going to be a relatively up and down game. Going to be taking a look at the over, and I'm going to be willing to take those points. 861, 862 on the betting board. It is Ohio. They are on the road facing off against Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio is a home underdog of 2.5 points. Hold on scheme. It is 144. With Miami of Ohio, I did set them as a 3-point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Ohio. Bobcats have had a, shall we say, tumultuous last 2 seasons on defense, but it does feel like they're starting to do a little bit of a better job now. It's not a team that's going to be going out there and generating a bunch of turnovers or anything like that, but for this Ohio unit, they've done a nice job of being able to prevent teams from being able to get some second chances, and they've done a much better job of being able to guard the three-point arc. Now, I will say this as well, they are giving up, Ohio is about 10.7 points per 100 possessions more when they are away from home rather than when they are at home, and for Ohio, if you look overall for the season, still about 162nd in all of college basketball in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but they do go up against a Miami of Ohio unit that leaves a lot to be desired down low. Miami of Ohio outside the top 315 in their rebound rate. You don't have a lot of size, and you really don't have that dominant guy that's able to take over a game for Miami of Ohio, as they've been able to get relatively good production out of Darwishi Hunter. Hunter's been able to supply the team with about 12 points per contest. He shoots from three-point range about 36% per distance, and Miami of Ohio as a collective, they're shooting about 36.5% from the outside, but even with that, just not having a single guy that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game and is able to be a true rim protector is going to be hurting them against an Ohio bunch that they do a really nice job of valuing the ball. Ohio, a top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and Ohio is actually averaging about 0.9 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. A lot of this is thanks to a good backcourt duo in Jalen Hunter along Sharif Mitchell, who are able to combine for about 27.2 points per game. One thing these guys have in common, they don't necessarily pop it well from three. Ohio as a whole does shoot 36.1% from three, but Mitchell and Hunter, they combined to shoot about 31% from the outside. Now, with Ohio, it's not like this team is necessarily batting down the hatches with their rebounding either. I was criticizing our good friends Miami of Ohio for it. The Bobcats, they don't have a single guy in the roster that's giving you north of 5 rebounds per game. They're about 270th in the country with regards to their rebound rate, but they do have guys like a Miles Brown, who's able to give you 9 points, shoots 41% from three-point range. A.J. Clayton, block and a half, 12.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. I do like what he's able to bring to the table. Was expecting much more this season out of Ike Cornish, but all in all, Ohio, they've got relatively good depth. I do think that they're going to do a nice job on the outside. They're just a much better perimeter defense than this Ohio bunch, and it is an Ohio bunch that, credit is due, they've given up 60 points of fear through the last 4 games, but 2 of those games came against Eastern and Central Michigan, and then they gave up 97 to Toledo. Meanwhile, you've got an Ohio bunch that they themselves have given up fewer than 70 points in each of their last 5 games, so interesting circumstance here. I did set my total at a 145. I do think that with Ohio, they're going to do a nice job taking it to a Miami of Ohio bunch that has done a really nice job of being able to guard the three-point arc. They're a top 50 team with that regard, but they give up much more in the interior, and Ohio is a team that's looking to drive the ball inside and try to get a bunch of layups, and I think that they're going to have success here. 1 to lay up to 2.5 here with Ohio, and going to be looking at the over. 863, 864 on the betting board. Buffalo plays us in Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois is in a pick'em game. Your total on this game between 150 and 150.5. Did set Buffalo as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them. It's a Northern Illinois team that's been all sorts of disappointing this year. You just don't have a lot down low with Northern Illinois being outside the top 300 in terms of their rebound rate. Now, Buffalo's well outside the top 225 with this regard as well, but I do think that Janavia Smith, coupled with Cy Chapman, being able to supply the team with nearly 15 rebounds per game, that's going to be able to win out. They have been dealing with an injury in the backcourt to Anquan Bolden Jr., who he tried to come back in that Kent State game. You could tell that he was not himself, but he still do have a little bit of something in the backcourt. And Sean Fulcher, who's been able to spike 8.5 points, gives out 3 assists now. For Buffalo, they return the ball over 14.5 times per contest, and they're shooting 27% from 3. Those are both bottom 75 marks in all of college basketball with the 3-point shooting percentage. That's more of a bottom 25 mark. But for Northern Illinois, this team was supposed to be an all-gas but no-breaks team that was dominant on offense, not so great on defense, and you've been able to get some relatively okay production with 14 points per contest out of Xavier Amos, but now he's out of the fold. That means that David Coit, who was already having to do pretty much it all, he has to do even more. He's averaging 20 points, 3 boards, 3 assists per contest on 33% 3-point shooting, but you just need someone to be able to step up, be able to take the load off of him. Zarik Nutter has been out throughout the entirety of the season. He was able to give the team 5.5 boards, number 2 scorer with 15 points per contest, which means that Yannick Conan Niederhauser, the big man down low with about 2 blocks per contest, he's pretty much your number 2 option at this point with about 7.5 points per game, while this Buffalo team just haven't had a lot of good options in general. But Isaiah Adams, he does give us a little bit of, shall we say, versatility with 13 points, 4 boards, 4 assists. So I do think that Buffalo comes in just, for 1, the healthier team, and 2, the team that should be able to control things on the glass against a Northern Illinois team that just has not been able to find themselves recently. It is a Buffalo bunch that they themselves have scored 72 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games, and they've gotten cooked on defense, giving up at least 76 points in each of their last 4 games. So situation of something's got to give. I do think that with the ailments in Northern Illinois, they just don't do their part with this total. So I might total 147.5. So I'm going to be looking looking at the under with Buffalo, made them the 1.5 point favorite, so going to be willing to take them on this pick line. 865, 866 on the betting board. It is Tulane. They play us to Wichita State, and Wichita State is an underdog of 2.5 to 3 points with your total between 155 and 155.5. I did set Tulane as a favorite of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay this summer with Tulane. They get outgunned down low. They are outside the top 300 in terms of rebound rate, but I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job in this spot against a Wichita State team that they just don't have a lot from the perimeter. Kobe Rogers has been able to do a nice job supplying the team with about 16 points per contest, shoots the high 30s from three-point range, but outside of Rogers, you really don't have anyone else on the roster that sees meaningful minutes, that shoots above 33% from three. Now, you do have a quartet of different guys, Harnell Beverly, Dallin Reginald, Quincy Ballard, Kenny Poto, that all give you at least 5.2 rebounds per game, and Wichita State is a top 125 team in terms of rebound rate, but we've got a Tulane bunch that does a really nice job of being able to generate turnovers. Their top 5 scorers, 4 of them give you at least 1.3 steals per contest, with having a pair of guys in Jalen Forbes along with Kevin Cross, who have been able to combine for just under 32 points per contest between the two of them. They shoot 37.5% from three and Cross, 4.5 assists per game for a Tulane team that they turn the ball over 11.2 times per contest. Considering they're a top 30 team in terms of tempo in all of college basketball, that's actually a really good mark. And then you've got just so many guys that can find a way to be able to get the ball in there from three-point range, as Kevin Cross is shooting 39% from three with his 4.5 assists, 1.3 steals, 17 points, 7 boards per contest. Zion James, 14 points, 5 boards. He shoots 36.5% from three, and as a matter of fact, out of your top 5 scorers, all but one of them do shoot at least 36% from three-point range. Now, Tulane, they themselves are going to give it up a little bit from three-point range. They've been allowing opponents to shoot about 37% from three-point range away from them. That goes down to 32% when they're at home. And Wichita State, not a bad perimeter defense. On the road, they allow opponents to shoot 33.7% from the outside, but just their lack of outside shooting, and with Wichita State not being able to have as great of control and command of the offense, with not having a guy like a Kevin Cross, even a number 2 guy like a Zion James that's able to take hold of the offense, as Harnell Beverly, right now your leader in assists with about 3.2. I do think that that is going to be to their detriment, and I do think that Tulane bunch has lost 7 straight games, but has been very close in a lot of these. They're going to be able to bust through here. I did set Tulane as a favorite of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it in. This time I told 155.5. Here at the 155, willing to go over. It's a Wichita State team that has a pretty good tempo. They just haven't necessarily put the ball in the basket, and Tulane is one of those teams that just has a way of really speeding teams up there. Very few in college basketball that are able to do so. They are one of them. As for Tulane, they have now given up at least 75 points in every single one of their games since the beginning of the month of February, and I think that continues here. So looking at the over, and Tulane laying the number, 867, 868 on the betting board. San Diego State is going to be playing against Boise State. Boise State is a 7.5 to an 8-point underdog with your total 137 to 137.5. I feel like this line has just gotten too far inflated. I said San Diego State as a 6-point favorite. Going to be one to take the 8 here with Boise State /7.5. With Boise State, this bunch has done a really nice job of being able to find some offensive efficiency. Going into conference play, they're outside the top 150 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but you've got a pair of guys in Chibuzo Egbo along with Max Rice who are shooting about from three-point range. They combine for just under 26.5 points per game while shooting about 38.5% from three-point range. Now, the one thing that Boise State really doesn't have is a main facilitator. You've got Cam Martin coupled with Roddy Anderson that both give you about 2.5 assists per contest, but Dyson Dagenhart has been able to do a really nice job down low, 17.6 boards, and do have to recognize that San Diego State is a much better defense at home rather than on the road. They're giving up about 16 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral environment, and both of these teams are top 30 teams in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, so both of these teams are going to need to hit the glass hard. Got a Boise State team that's 15th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, and San Diego State is just 67th, despite the fact that they're going to have the best peer rebounder in this game, Jaden Ledee. He's been able to supply 20 points, right around about 8.5 rebounds per game, but it does have me a little bit concerned about San Diego State. The guys that were on the roster last year, Darian Trammell, Lamont Butler, they just haven't had good years. They're combining for about 15.5 points, 6 assists, and 2.8 turnovers a game, but both are shooting below 30% from three-point range. And you just take a look at the San Diego State roster. Other than Jaden Ledee, along with Reese Sticks and Waters, who gives you 10.5 points per game, nobody else is shooting above 33% from three-point range. I think that that's going to be very much to the detriment of San Diego State. I do think that San Diego State is going to be playing a lot of low-scoring slogs moving forward, and I do certainly think that this is going to be one of them. I set them as a total of 134.5 in this spot, so I'm going to be taking a look at the under, but I do think that Omar Stanley, his versatility for Boise State, going to be big. It is a Boise State team that has given up at least 72 points in 3 of their last 4 games. Matter of competition, though, playing at Wyoming in a blowout game, New Mexico, playing against Nevada. I do think that things get bogged down here. Meanwhile, you've got a San Diego State unit that last time they gave up north of 70 points in a game. You do have to go all the way back to the month of January, as they have been so dominant with that regard, January 30th against Colorado State. So just on my total 134, I'm looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the 7.5 to 8 here with Boise State. 869, 870 on the betting board. This starts conference tournament action. This is the Missouri Valley Conference tournament as Missouri State and Indiana State do battle from the Enterprise Center in St. Louis. Indiana State a 9.5 point favorite, and your total is 148.5, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Indiana State. Felt like they should be a 12-point favorite, and this is one of those rare times where in a game out there in the Enterprise, I'm going to be willing to take a look at the over. Missouri State has fallen to being outside the top 130 with regards to points allowed on a per-possession basis, and for this Missouri State unit, it's been one that has been able to do a relatively solid job over the years of being able to guard the three-point arc, and thus far this season for Missouri State, they're allowing opponents to shoot about 33.6% from 3. It's fallen off a little bit, but still about 169th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you've got an Indiana State unit that has been allowing teams away from home to shoot about 33.8% from 3, but as we know with this venue, it just really doesn't help out shooters in general, and I do think that this is a very valuable time for Indiana State to utilize Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, better known as our good friend Robbie Avila. He's got just so much versatility for this Indiana State team. He's able to give you 17.5 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, and while Indiana State is one of your best three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, they shoot about 38.4% from three-point range. They're able to play a really good inside-out style as well, so they're a team that's able to get the ball inside. They're able to find a way to be able to get to the free throw line, so even though the shooting might be down a little bit in this game, they're still going to be able to be solid on that front, especially with having Isaac Swope along with Ryan Conwell combining for about 32.5 points per contest. Both of these guys do a nice job facilitating, as you've got 5 different guys on Indiana State with at least 2.2 assists per contest, and you've got a Missouri State team that they're not great with their three-point shooting. They shoot about 31.5% from the outside, but you do have a relatively good team in terms of rebounding. They're a top 50 team with regards to rebound rate, and Jay Benson has been leading the way with about 7.5 boards per contest, but Donovan Clay, along Chance Moore, they've been able to combine for about 11.2 rebounds per game. Also, Mason has been able to supply about 17.5 points per game, shoots about 35% from three-point range, but he's pretty much the only guy on the roster that sees meaningful minutes that shoots above 34% from three-point range, so I do think that for Missouri State, going to be a little bit tough for them to do their part, but for Missouri State going into that game against Murray State, they were really playing some ghastly defense. I think that they were very much big-time beneficiaries of them, as they allowed at least 70 points in every single one of the games that they played in the month of February. Now, they did hold Indiana State last time around to just 73 points. That was a game where Indiana State shot 30% from three-point range, but did only turn the ball over 7 times in that game. I do think that Indiana State going to be able to do a much better time this time around, and I do think that Indiana State, with their up-tempo style, is going to take it out of this Missouri State team in the second day of a back-to-back. So, did set my total 150, looking at the overhand with Indiana State, made them the 12-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay it. 871, 872 on the betting board. Northern Iowa is going to be playing against Belmont. And Belmont does find themselves as a very slim 1-point underdog. Total on this game is 153.5, and I'm going to be willing to lay the 1. I set Northern Iowa as a 2.5-point favorite, with Belmont just so much fear with this defense, just really relenting. I know that we were talking about it with mid-major Matt, aka Matt Josephs, and for Belmont, they're well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, and for Belmont, they really give it up on the road, as at home, they were allowing opponents to shoot 30% from three-point range. When they left home, they were allowing opponents to shoot 37% from the outside, and if you look at just the points allowed on a per-possession basis, it's really a big drop-off in all areas for Belmont, giving up nearly 13.5 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home, going up against a Northern Iowa unit that, if you look for the entirety of the season, the defense has been rough. Northern Iowa, 20th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. They don't really have anyone on the roster other than Peyton Anderson that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game, even though you have Jacob Hudson, who stands right around 6'10". He hasn't necessarily been too much of a producer there, but for Northern Iowa, they really got their act together towards the back half of the season in terms of their defense, so I'm very encouraged there for Northern Iowa. They come in having allowed 71 points or fewer in all but 2 out of their last 9 games, and I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job of being able to just buckle down a little bit more with regards to their perimeter defense, because that's where they've really been lacking, and this sort of an environment I do think actually bodes very well for them. Northern Iowa, 228th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and even though they don't necessarily have a bunch of dominance down low, you've also got Nathan Heisey. I gave him short shrift. He's actually been able to give the team 6.3 rebounds per game as well. He's really surged here towards the back half of the season. You've got a Northern Iowa team that does rank in the top 85 with regards to their rebound rate. They shoot about 35% from 3. Bowenborn is a little bit of a chucker. He shoots only about 39% from the floor, but does give you about 13.5 points per contest for a team that does a relatively good job of not turning the ball over, while Belmont, that is a little bit of an Achilles heel for them. They turn the ball over north of 12 times per contest. We've got a pair of guys in Cade Tyson, Malik Dia, who have been able to combine for 33.5 points per contest, with Tyson shooting 47.5% from 3-point range. And for Belmont, good news is if they can get to the free throw line, out of their top 5 scorers, 4 of them do shoot at least 77.8% of the charity stripe, while Jacoby Gillespie, along with Keyshawn Davidson, they've been able to combine for about 8 assists per contest. But I do think that with Belmont being very much a jump shooting team, I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a tough circumstance for them. They took it to Valparaiso, but Valparaiso, I mean, they just flat out stink, so I don't necessarily put a lot of credence there, and I do think that for Northern Iowa, they're going to do a nice job forcing a few turnovers, doing just enough to be able to get the job done in this ordeal, so I'm going to be taking a look at the under, and with this Northern Iowa team, made them the 2.5 point favorite, so going to be willing to lay the 1. 873, 874 on the betting board. It is Drake playing against Evansville, and the Purple Aces are sizable underdogs of 13 points with your total 150.5. Another under for me. I set my total at a 144.5. You've got a Drake unit that has been a top 75 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Really one of the most well-rounded mid-majors that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Tucker DeVries just going into takeover mode. He's been able to supply 22 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists, 1.7 steals on about a 35% three-point shooting clip. And what I do like about this Drake team as well, each of their top 3 scorers shoot at least 79% of the free throw line as a collective. They shoot 75.5% of the charity stripe, 9.7 turnovers per game overall for them, and they are not too reliant upon the 3 ball. So that's going to be big in this sort of a venue. I did have to set my line at a 12.5 though. Now, for Evansville, they have been lambasted by Drake throughout the season. The first time around, they got destroyed by well north of 20 points. Much better and much more spirited effort. Second time around, they lost a game 78-75 though. They needed to shoot 8 of 18 from 3-point range in that one, but I do think that with Evansville, the key to this game is Ben Humericus. He's been able to supply 15 points, 4.5 boards, shoots from 3-point range north of 40% from distance, and this team truly comes and goes with him. He was out of the fold throughout the month of January, and you could tell that this was just not the same team, but it becomes who's going to be able to help around him. You got someone like a Kenny Strawbridge who's able to give you 10 points, 4 boards, 2.5 assists, relatively well-rounded player. Usan Toomey has been able to give you 6 rebounds per game, so I do think that even though this Evansville team is going to lose the rebound battle, and I think that they're going to lose it pretty bad. Evansville, in terms of their rebound rate, they're checking in 280th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, it's a Drake unit that is more around about 106th. I do think that they're going to be able to provide a little bit more of a speed bump, and for this Evansville unit, it has been relatively rough for them on defense going into this tournament. They had allowed at least 80 points in 4 of their last 5 games, and you've got a Drake team that had that just insane triple overtime game against UIC, so that did warp their numbers very much, but I do think that you're going to be getting yourself a little bit more of a defensive slog, much like we have been seeing just throughout Arch Madness throughout the years, and got a pair of teams that aren't necessarily super duper up tempo. Evansville, in terms of total possessions per game, right around about 137th in all of college basketball, and Drake, they're clocking at about 128th. So did set my total at a 144.5, diving in on the under 13 or more. That is my buy point on Evansville. 875, 876 on the betting board. It is Bradley. They take on UIC, Illinois, Chicago. There's no numbers up on this game. I am literally doing this as UIC just won that double overtime game, but that said, I've got my handicap all set. I set Bradley as a 9.5 point favorite, so we'll lay up to 9 with them, 10 or more, taking the points with UIC, and set my total at 135.5. 135 or less, when at the over 136 or higher to the under. Certainly did factor in the fact that Illinois Chicago played double overtime yesterday, and really the forte of this Illinois Chicago team is something that might not pop up as much in this tournament, in that they've been a really good 3-point shooting defense. Away from home, entering into yesterday, they were allowing opponents to shoot just 30% from 3-point range. I will say this, for UIC, this has been a defense that has traveled really well all season long. If you look at just raw points allowed on a per possession basis going into yesterday, 115th, which is not bad, but they're allowing darn near 6 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. As a matter of fact, they're a top 25 defense away from home in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and They face off against a Bradley team that's about 81st in the country, turns points allowed on a per possession basis, and Bradley is just a really balanced team. They don't necessarily do one thing great, they don't do one thing terrible. Malevy Leons, Duke Dean, along Connor Hickman, they all provide 14 to 14.5 points per game. Dean and Hickman are your two main facilitators with 7 assists to 3.2 turnovers per game, and both shoot between 38.5% and 39.5% per three, while Leons is a versatile 6'9" big man that gives you 7 boards, 14 points, block and a half, and does shoot 34% from three-point range. Guy that has been a little bit under the radar, that has been able to provide a little bit of pop from three-point range as well. The gentleman from Iceland, and Almar Atlason, hopefully I said that correctly, he's been able to come on strong with 6+ points in 3 out of the team's last 4 games, shooting 41% from 3, so that's a little bit of an added wrinkle to help out Bradley team that hasn't had a ton of depth throughout the season. And for UIC, it's just all about being able to play even up on the glass. Bradley a top 125 team in terms of their rebound rate. UIC while outside the top 225 with only one guy in Toby Okani, who's giving you north of 4.2 rebounds per game. Okani, 11.5 points, 6.8 boards, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and it is a UIC team that actually shoots it really well from 3-point range. Going to yesterday, they were shooting 37.1% from the outside, and that was very translatable home to road. You take a look at this UIC team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They do see a fall off of more like 10 points when they're away from home, so they don't have those reverse splits much like you see on the defensive side of things. But the 12.5 turnovers per game and the fact that they just don't generate second chances has been a little bit of a bugaboo for them. So 135 or less, looking at the over, 136 or higher to the under. And with Bradley, one to lay up to 9 with them, 10 or more. Taking the points with the Flames, 877, 878 on the betting board. It is the Coastal Conference Tournament out there in Washington, D.C. America's favorite tag team. You don't just get William. You don't just get Mary. You get both. Plays against North Carolina A&T. A&T is between a 4.5 to a 5-point underdog, with your total at a 138 to a 138.5. Did say William & Mary's a 5-point favorite at the 4.5. I'm going to be willing to lay this, and hey, a rare over. I'm going to be taking a look at this little over. I set my total at 143. This North Carolina A&T team has just been absolutely brutal with regards to their defense. They're outside the top 3 internationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and you go up against a William & Mary team that, I mean, they certainly aren't lighting the world on fire in terms of their offense, but do have a pair of guys in Trey Moss, Glenn Dorsey, that both are able to combine for a little bit over 27 points per contest. Dorsey's able to shoot 36.5% from 3-point range, and the shooting backdrop in the Entertainment Sports and Arena Center, it's nothing great, it's nothing terrible. I don't think that this is going to be a venue that really factors positively or negatively to a bunch of offensive production, and you've got a William & Mary team that in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're about 155th in the country, only experiencing a fall off of about 3.4 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and they have to go up against an A&T team that now has back to the fold their top scorer in Landon Glasper. He was out for much of the month of January, and he's really the linchpin of this team that is a top 20 team in all of college basketball, by the way. In terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, that's something that travels, though. A&T, they're scoring the same amount of points per possession at home and on the road, but they're 330th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Camden Shell has been able to give you some nice facilitation, 4 assists, 12.5 points per game. He was dealing with a little bit of an injury. He's back in the fold, but for A&T, they just don't really shot make. They shoot 38.5% from the floor, about 29% from 3, and this team is outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. Now, William & Mary is not doing the most amazing job on the glass either. Noah Collier was supposed to be their main big man. He played 3 games this season, but you've got a pair of guys who have been able to do a solid job down low, as Caleb Dorsey's been able to give you 6 boards per contest. Chase Lowe, he's been able to give you 7 boards per contest, so even though William & Mary is not necessarily the most dominant team on the glass, they should very much be able to control this one. And for North Carolina A&T, they give it up from 3-point range. North Carolina A&T 273rd in all of college basketball, turns opponents' 3-point shooting percentage away from home, balloons up to 37.4%. Meanwhile, William & Mary, they allow opponents away from home to shoot 36.6% from 3. So I did set my total 143. Do keep in mind William & Mary, a bottom 50 team in the country with regards to total possessions per game, but even with that, I think that the defense is going to be leaky, so I'm going to be looking at the over. And with William & Mary, willing to lay up to 4.5 with them. 879, 880 on the betting board. It is Hampton, and they are going to be playing against Elon. Elon is a 4-point favorite with your total 148 to 148.5, and with Elon, I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Hampton. Hampton has looked a little bit different recently because now they finally have Jordan Nesbitt, their leading scorer from last season, doing a nice job of facilitating. 4+ assists is in all but 4 of the team's games ever since the turn of the new year. Overall, he's averaging about 10 points, 4 assists, few rebounds per contest. Has not been the same scorer as he was a season ago, but he's been able to get a lot of guys just in the fold and firing all cylinders. It is a Hampton team that's about 200th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and that's much better than Elon, who's allowing opponents to shoot 34.5% from three. Though I will say this about Elon: a better three-point shooting defense away from home rather than at home. They allow opponents to shoot 36.4% from distance at home, more like 33.5% in a road or neutral court venue, and it is an Elon bunch that has really taken on the whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach. With this Hampton team, you've got one dominant player down low in Kyrie Mullen, who's been able to give you 15 points. There's in there about 8.5 rebounds per game, but he's been out of the fold since about Valentine's Day, and he's probably going to be out once again in this one. But then you've got someone in the backcourt, and Tedrick Wilcox is able to give you about 11.5 points. He's been able to take hold of the offense a little bit more along with Nesbitt. And then for Elon, you've got essentially 4 separate guys that give you at least 9.5 points per contest, with nobody other than TK Simpkins averaging north of 12.5 points per game, who gives you 13.5 points per contest. You've got Simpkins along with Max McKinnon combining for about 9.5 rebounds per game. With McKinnon, he shoots 38% from three. And all in all, this is an Elon team that shoots 35.5% from three, but they are well outside the top 275 in terms of their overall rebound rate, and they just give up open look after open look, especially down low. Elon, 347th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, we'll say this about Hampton as well. They are outside the top 275 with that respect, and you got a Elon team that they're only averaging about 3.2 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. They shoot as a whole about 35.5% per three, while turning the ball over about 11.8 times per contest. Nothing great, nothing terrible. You got a Hampton team that's been able to find it a little bit more on the defensive front. They have now given up 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, so I do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job of being able to hold in this one. I did set my total at a 150.5. I do think that this is going to be a game that is going to get a little bit more harebrained and nutty, especially with this Elon bunch just giving up the points the way that they are, at least 71 in 4 of their last 5 games, and I do think that this game is going to be close enough for late game following as well. So set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Hampton, even with the injury to Mullen hurting them a little bit down low because Elon just doesn't rebound to start with, and I'm going to be taking a look at the over to go along those points. 881, 882 on the betting board. The Citadel is going to be playing against Mercer. This is from good old Asheville, North Carolina, as Mercer is a 3.5 to a 4-point favorite. And your total on this game, it is 138, and with Mercer, I did set them as a favorite of 4 points. Seeing the 3.5s out there, I'm going to be willing to lay that. Mercer comes into this tournament just really surging with their offense. They have gotten to at least 75 points in all but one of their last 6 games, and for Mercer, it's not a team that really has that dominant score or anything like that. Mercer has Jalen McCreary. He's able to give you about 15.5 points, 4.5 boards, but he really doesn't play on the outside. You've got a trio of guys that have really been able to light it up from three-point range. Shake Thomas, Robbie Carpety, along with also Mr. David Thomas. All these guys, they've been able to combine for about 28 points per contest. They all shoot between 38 and 40% from three-point range for a Mercer team that overall this season has been well outside the top 175 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But this is a Citadel team that they prove correct the theory. Just because you play slow doesn't mean that you play good defense. The Citadel, well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, they come in having allowed at least 81 points in 3 of their last 4 games, and they are outside the top 230 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Elijah Morgan, AJ Smith have been able to combine for about 30.8 points per contest, and with Mr. Morgan, he's been able to shoot 40% from the outside, going up against a Mercer defense that isn't great or terrible with their opponent's three-point shooting percentage. They allow opponents to shoot about 34% from distance, and it's pretty equal home to road. That ranks 191st in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, with the Citadel, this team is 243rd in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Again, relatively similar home and road splits with them as well. The Citadel should be able to win the battle down low with Clinton Laura Brown giving you a block and a half. He's been able to supply the team with a little bit over 9 rebounds per game, and then Winston Hill, when he was out there, was giving you 6.5 rebounds per game, and ever since his absence in the month of January, just haven't been able to find the number 2 rebounder. Nobody else gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, with Mercer doing a relatively solid job with the holes greater than some of its parts approach, with only turning the ball over about 11.5 times per contest, and despite them really not having anyone other than McCreary that hits the glass, being able to be a team that's been okay with regards to their rebounding. They're about 226th in the country with regards to rebound rate. I do think that they find a way to get the job done here. Did set my total at a 142. I do think that even though the Citadel plays slowly, they're going to give up plenty of buckets, so I'm looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Mercer. 883, 884 on the betting board. East Tennessee State, they play against VMI, and VMI is an underdog of 16 to 17 points. And Total on this game, you're going to be getting that at a 147, and I did set my total at 145. I'm looking at the under. For VMI, they've actually allowed an opponent's 3-point shooting percentage that has been lower on the road rather than at home, and it has been a ghastly VMI defense, but they allow opponents to shoot right around about 36% from three-point range at home. It's not much of a drop-off, but drops off to about 35.7% in a road or neutral court environment, and I could only set East Tennessee State as a 15-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take the points. This VMI team, their real bugaboo, has been giving up the three ball. They're well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, but East Tennessee State really doesn't shoot it well from three-point range. East Tennessee State overall has been able to shoot 29.9% from three, and you've got E.B. Awesome, was able to shoot 34.5% from the outside. He supplies the team with 15.5 points per contest. He's the only guy that averages north of 3.4 points per game that shoots above 30.5% from three. So the main kryptonite of VMI, that is not going to be unearthed. Now, ETSU, they're going to be able to dominate this game down low. You've got Jaden Parker, Jaden Seymour, along with Karan Boyd, who have all been able to give you at least 6 rebounds per game, and this is a VMI team that is well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate, despite having Tashad Jackson supplying you with 10.4 points, 10.4 rebounds per game. You've only got one other guy in Stefan Ulawani, who's been able to give you north of 4 rebounds per contest, and for VMI, they do have a nice point guard in Brendan Watkins, who's been able to give you 3 assists, 15 points per game, but doesn't turn the ball over about 3 times per contest, and for VMI, 15.5 turnovers per game in terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis. This is a bottom 20 mark in all of college basketball for VMI. They come in really rough form in terms of their offense as well. This team has scored 62 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, and last time VMI was able to exceed 70 points, you have to go back to their game against Chattanooga on February 8th. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a low-scoring bleeder, and with ETSU, just the way that their offense is set up, while I do think that they win this game, and they win this game comfortably, them just not being able to pop it for play, I think costs them this cover and also the over. I set my total 145, diving in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with VMI, 885, 886 on the betting board. It's the OVC tournament from Evansville with Western Illinois and Little Rock doing battle. Little Rock, a favorite of 3.5 points total on this game, is 140.5, and talk about a battle between the tortoise and the hare. Western Illinois well outside the top 275 towards the total possessions per game. Little Rock more around 87th, but I do like this total under. I set my total at a 137.5. Western Illinois has really been able to do a nice job locking it down on defense, doing the little things well. They're a top 40 team in terms of their rebound rate. They're a bunch that they really take away the three-point arc as well, as with Western Illinois going into yesterday, number 15 in all of college basketball in opponents' three-point shooting percentage away from home, allowing opponents to shoot just 29% from three-point range. And Little Rock is also a pretty solid defense in terms of not giving up the three ball. They're 82nd in all of college basketball in terms of three-point shooting percentage. Little Rock has a bit more firepower, which is why I did set them as the very slight favorite. KK Robinson, Lunchmere Champlin, these two guys combining for about 31 to 31.5 points per contest. Champlin and Robinson both shoot about 33% from three. It's a Little Rock team as a whole. They shoot 34% from three, 75% at the free throw line. Nothing rambunctious with their offense, but pretty solid. And they've been able to get a little bit more down low, as now they've been able to have Mikal Mitchell be on the floor, as he's missed 10 plus games, and this guy has absolutely been tearing it up. He has been able to give the team at least 7 rebounds in now each out of his last 6 games, 10 plus points in every one of them, and he facilitates. He's got at least 2 assists in each out of the last 5 games as well. So he has been a real godsend for this team, and without him, I probably would be setting Western Illinois as a favorite in this spot. But Ryan Myers, he does a solid job for this Western Illinois team as well. Shoots 41.5% from 3 with about 13.5 points per game. Now, the trepidation that I do have with Western Illinois on a tight line, they shoot 61.8% of the free throw line. That is a bottom 20 mark in all of college basketball, but I do think that for Western Illinois, despite the fact that they do have the 13 turnovers per game, despite the fact that they are 282nd in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, I truly do trust in them just being able to do a nice job locking down a Little Rock team that has been legitimately a top 100 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and it does come back to Little Rock just not necessarily having a ton down low. This Little Rock team, in terms of their rebound rate, they're about 82nd in all of college basketball, but other than Mitchell, they don't really have that one dominant player. Now, I do think that he's going to be able to transform things, as last time these two teams did battle, it was a 63-60 slog in that game. Mr. Mitchell was coming in off the bench. He hadn't found himself quite yet. He had 5 boards in like 22 minutes, only about like 2 or 3 points. But I do think that for Western Illinois, they're going to do a nice job being able to guard the three-point arc. I do think that they're going to get their slower, grimier style, force a few turnovers to make this game a little bit of an eyesore. Sub by total 137.5. I like the under. And with Little Rock, made them a 1.5 point favorite, so going to be willing to take the 3.5 here with Western Illinois. 887, 888 on the betting board. Morehead St and UT Martin are going to be doing battle from the great state of Indiana. And currently I'm seeing an opener of 152 on this total, with Morehead St being a 6-point favorite. And with Morehead St, I can only set them as a 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. This is a back-to-back for Morehead State, and you've got a UT Martin team that the last time they played against Morehead State won that game with both teams scoring north of 80. I do think that things are going to be a little bit more bogged down in this game. You've got a Morehead State team that does a really good job on the glass. Top 50 team with regards to rebound rate, as you've got Riley Minix, who's been supplying the team with about 20.5 points, 10 rebounds per contest. But for UT Martin, this team is actually going to be able to do, in my opinion, a solid job on the glass. They're a top 100 team in terms of their rebound rate. They've got a pair of guys in Issa Muhammad and Jacob Cruz who have been able to combine for 17.5 rebounds per game. Issa Muhammad was a little bit in and out of the fold towards the beginning part of the season, but he's back. Jordan Sears is going to be the best overall scorer in this game as well. 21 points, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists, shoots 44.5% from three. It is a UT Martin team that does shoot north of 36% from three-point range, and UT Martin certainly the lesser of these two teams with regards to just their overall defense, but UT Martin has guarded the arc really well away from home. They allow opponents to shoot just 30.8% from three-point range. Meanwhile, Morehead St there, 39th in the country in terms of overall opponents' three-point shooting percentage. That falling to 30.8% when they're away from home as well. And for UT Martin, they actually do the better job of being able to take care of the ball. UT Martin, a top 40 team in terms of total possessions per game. They only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. Morehead St a little bit north of 12 times per game, with Jordan Lathan, Khalil Thomas being able to supply you with about 27 points per contest. They combine to shoot 39% for three and all. Now, Morehead St, they do shoot 35.5% from three-point range, but I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slowed down game. I do think that Morehead St is going to be looking to get their tempo in this one, and Morehead State's tempo is slow in terms of total possessions per game, 334th in all of college basketball. So I did set my total more at 146. I'm going to be taking a look at the under at Morehead State. Can I make them a 4-point favorite? Also going to be taking a look at the points with UT Martin. 889, 890 on the betting board from the Sanford Pentagon. You've got South Dakota and Oral Roberts doing battle, and Oral Roberts is a 3 to 3.5 point favorite. Your total on this game is 153. Did set my total 152. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. Oral Roberts just has not been able to really hit on offense the way that they have in the past. Now, I will say for Oral Roberts, they've actually given up 70 plus points in all but one out of their last 22 games against D1 competition, so they've been pretty ghastly on that front. But you do have a South Dakota team that they're not afraid to turn it over. With South Dakota, they're turning the ball over about 12.9 times per contest in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, outside the top 275 in all of college basketball, but they should be able to control things down low with Lahat Thione being able to give you 14.5 points, 9.5 boards. South Dakota, top 150 team in terms of rebound rate. Oral Roberts well outside the top 300, but we've also got a South Dakota team that's certainly given up the points, much like our good friends in Oral Roberts. And Oral Roberts, after they ended the season cold, I had my DK Network right at being the over in their last game against UMKC, and of course they didn't come through, but even with that, you still have each of your top three scorers in Kareem Thompson, Jalen Bedford, Isaac McBride, all shooting at least 37% for three. McBride, 19.5 points, 3 assists per contest for an Oral Roberts team that does a much better job of being able to take care of the ball. Just 9.8 turnovers per game in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This is a Oral Roberts team that is the much more dominant of these two teams. And then you go up against a South Dakota team that does have some very funky home and road splits in the way that they shoot it from three-point range this season. As for South Dakota, overall, they are shooting in that neighborhood about 36% from three-point range, so they've been able to do a solid job on that front. But when it comes to South Dakota, they, away from home, are shooting right around about 39.6% from three, 35% at home, so actually closer to 37.5% from distance. And then additionally, with Oral Roberts, you've been able to just have a little bit more depth with regards to their production as well. So you've got now 4 separate guys that have been able to give you at least 10 points per contest. Shung Weaver, he was a little bit in and out of the fold, but he's back for the team. And even though Oral Roberts is well outside the top 325 with regards to rebound rate, having Bedford, along with Kareem Thompson, being able to supply you with a combined about 13 rebounds per game, I think it's going to be massive against a South Dakota team that continues to be well outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Got an Oral Roberts team that they certainly do give it up from the outside as well. Oral Roberts is allowing teams to shoot from three-point range right around about 35.5%. That balloons up to 37% in a road or neutral court environment. But with South Dakota not being able to defend here, and the Sanford Pentagon legitimately being a good shooting environment for a lot of these guys, I do think that Oral Roberts finds a way to be able to get the job done. I do think that this is going to be a game that goes under with South Dakota just having so many turnovers and them just being a little bit sloppy with the ball, and we did notice that a little bit from Oral Roberts towards the back half of the season as well. So a circumstance where I did set my total at a 152 here at the 153, diving under, and Oral Roberts willing to lay up to 3.5 with them. 891, 892 on the betting board. San Diego is going to be playing against Pepperdine. This is out here in lovely Las Vegas, and for Pepperdine, they're a 1.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 157, and for Pepperdine, I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Don't think that they're going to win this game by north of 50, but for Pepperdine, they've really been able to get Javon Porter going. He had a nice day yesterday, and he's been able to give the team north of 13 points per contest for a Pepperdine unit that they entered in this tournament, allowing opponents to shoot north of 45% from three-point range in a road or neutral court environment. And their perimeter defense absolutely stinks, but when you've got that big of an outlier, that does tell me that they were getting a little bit unlucky towards the beginning part of the season, and now that it's starting to reverse course a little bit, it is a Pepperdine team that going into yesterday had given up at least 70 points in each of their last 5 games, and got a San Diego unit that has now given up at least 80 in 3 out of their last 4 games. And for San Diego, this team has been able to shoot it relatively well from three-point range as well. They shoot about 34.5% from the outside. Deuce Turner, along with PJ Hayes, have been able to combine for about 26.5 points. They combine to shoot about 39% from the outside. But for San Diego, you don't necessarily have that main facilitator, Wayne McKinney, to be able to give you about 2.5 to 3 assists. He chips in their 13.5 points per game. But also for San Diego, you've only got really one rebounder in Steve Jamerson. The second, he's been able to give the team a little bit over 8 rebounds per game. But that said, you don't necessarily have a ton down low. It is a Pepperdine team that, while they get absolutely cooked from the outside when they're on the road, I do think that they're going to do a nice job of being able to win this rebound battle. Pepperdine, they're about 248th in all of college basketball with regards to the rebound rate. San Diego is just 289th, and San Diego has been allowing a lot of outside shots as well. It's not quite to the extent of Pepperdine, but San Diego, away from home, they allow opponents to shoot 37.2% from three-point range. For Pepperdine, you've also got 2 very dominant scorers, and this is a Pepperdine team that doesn't necessarily have a lot of depth. As a result, they've slowed down their tempo. They're well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, but along with Porter, you've got Houston Mallett along with Michael Ajay. These 2 guys have been able to combine for about 31.5 points per contest. Mallett shoots 41.5% from 3, and Ajay is shooting 48% from the outside for a Pepperdine team that they turn the ball over about 10.9 times per contest. I do think that Pepperdine finds a way to be able to get the job done. I do think that they're going to be able to get a little bit of a slower tempo here as well. Last time these 2 teams faced off, Pepperdine went on the road. They got an 83-77 win, and in that game, San Diego actually shot 8 of 13 from three-point range. I do think that that's going to be bogged down just a little bit, and I don't think that you see Pepperdine attempt 36 free throws like he did in that previous occurrence. So going to be taking a look at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to deuce with Pepperdine. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 893, 894 from Orleans Arena. Portland and Loyola Marymount to battle. Loyola Marymount, a 5.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 142. I did set my line at a 5.5. We were seeing a few 5s a little bit earlier, and I'm seeing a 6 pop up. Personally, I would rather take a 6 rather than lay a 5 personally, and it all just comes back to Loyola Marymount and the fact that this team has been all sorts of almighty banged up. With Loyola Marymount, they have been playing 6 scholarship players the last few weeks, and getting the 6 I just saw pop up, I'm going to be willing to take those points since I did set my line at a 5.5. Now for Portland, this has been a despicable and sad team. They are giving up north of 16 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, but they might have the versatile player out there on the floor that could take them to a cover. That would be Tyler Robertson. He's probably going to be the best player in this game with right around about 4.5 boards, 4 assists, 16.5 points, shoots 35.5% from 3, and it's a Portland team that out of their top 7 scorers, all but one of them shoot at least 34.9% from three-point range. One of those guys is Elamami Karama. He has been out of the fold since December, but he was the lone out of those guys, by the way, that was shooting below 34.9% from 3. So they've got some good outside shooting going up against a Loyola Marymount team that's well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. More like 166th in an opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but that balloons up to north of 36% when they are away from home. They go up against a Portland unit that's 355th in the country in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and they have to go up against the Loyola Marymount team that has been without Kelly Le'Upepe along with Tom Harris for quite some time. These have been 2 of your more dominant scorers throughout the season, but you've got a good facilitator in Justice Hill who comes in from LSU along with Morehead St. He's done a nice job being able to give this team right in that neighborhood about 4 assists, less than 2 turnovers per contest, shoots 37% from 3. Will Johnson has been able to give you about 11.5 points on 38% three-point shooting, and Alex Merkfeldez has been able to supply the team with 7 rebounds per game, as he's really the lone guy that's going to be active in this game that's giving you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. The 7-footer large team and has been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game as well, but certainly a leg up for them on the glass as Portland, they're clocking in 307th in the country in terms of rebound rate, though they do now have Yatu Yamanashi Williams, who comes in from the Southland. He's been able to give the team right around about 5 or so rebounds per game, and Tyler Harris, who was banged up, he's been able to give the team 5+ rebounds per game as well, but Loyola Marymount should be able to win that battle down low. They're 99th in the country in terms of rebound rate, but with Loyola Marymount just dealing with the lack of bodies right now, with Loyola Marymount just being very touch and go with the way that they guard, I do think that this is going to be a game where Portland is going to be able to hold in there, and I do think that this total is set too low, even though Loyola Marymount is well outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game. I think both of these teams give up 70+. I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Portland at a 6+, and looking at the over. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-581, 306-582. High Point and Radford do battle, and this is a true home game for High Point. They are 10.5 to 11.5 point favorites. So on this game is between 148 to 148.5. With High Point, I did set them as a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the 10.5 to 11 with Radford early tip time here. And for Radford, I do think that they're going to be able to rise up a little bit more with their defense. Been very just strange to see them outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And they still have a nice trio on the backcourt. They have like Brian Antoine, gives you 11.5 points on 48.5% three-point shooting, while DeQuan Smith, Keenan Giles, they've been able to supply about 4.5 assists between the two of them. You're able to get about 2 steals, 29.5 points per contest. And for High Point, where I think that he could be added is a little bit more down low, as Justin Archer has been able to give you 8 rebounds per game. You've been able to get about 6.5 points, 6.5 boards out of Josiah Harris, as well as Radford in terms of their rebound rate have not been a terrible team all season long. This is a High Point team that they certainly are going to be the more dominant team here, number 6 in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, but Radford under the radar, that has been one of their better attributes, as they've been about 218th in the country, but they actually have a positive rebound rate away from them. They've actually not hit the glass at all when they've been at home, so go figure there. Meanwhile, you do have a High Point team that, with regards to that rebound rate, Jocelyn Bodu along Kamani Harris, they combine for about 16.5 rebounds per game, so it's going to be very hard for Radford to be able to get second chances, while Kezagifa, Duke Miles in the backcourt, these two guys, they've been able to give you a combined about 33.5 points per contest, and it's a High Point team as a whole. They are in the top 30 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, despite the fact that, I'm not saying they're a bad three-point shooting team, but they shoot 35.1% from three-point range. That's like a slightly above average clip from three-point range. Now, for High Point, that is a three-point shooting percentage. It goes northward when they're at home to about 36.5%. That falls to about 31.5% in a road or neutral court environment. But for this High Point team, I do think that they're going to be able to get to the Radford team quite a bit. That, once again, been very much lacking with regards to their defense. But this Radford team has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to hit the road all season long. I do think that with Archer being able to do a relatively solid job down low, and with Radford giving up a full point and a half less per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, I do think that they hold in their semi-line at 10, so I'm going to be willing to take the points, and did make my total a 150. I do think that Radford going to continue to give it up a little bit from the interior, and I do think that High Point finds second and third chances, but I do think that Radford finds some nice shots from the perimeter against a High Point team that, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, they are checking in right in the neighborhood about 221st. So, going to be looking at the over and the points. 306-583, 306-584. Winthrop and Longwood do battle. This is going to be from the campus of High Point, and with Longwood, they're a 1-point favorite, and your total on this game is 145. And with the Lancers, I did set them as a 1.5 point underdog. I'm going to be looking at Winthrop outright on the money line, and big thing for me comes down to the fact that Winthrop absolutely cuts you off from three-point range. Winthrop, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, 61st in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, it's a High Point team that started out the year very strong in terms of their defense, and it's still a relatively solid Longwood defense. For Longwood, there's, though, 266th in the country in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and they go up against a Winthrop team that has someone like a Kason Harrison, who shoots in the high 30s from three-point range. He's able to supply the team with double figures. Now, if you're looking at just overall points allowed on a per possession basis, Winthrop is about 193rd. They're giving up 9.2 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, and Longwood is superior with this regard. Longwood, they're about 106th in the country. They give up about 8.5 points more per 100 possessions, but with Winthrop, I do think that they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job of just being able to avoid turnovers in general against a Longwood team that has been turning the ball over north of 12.5 times per contest. Waylon Napper does a nice job giving you 14 points, gives out 4+ assists per contest, but he flat out can't shoot it from three-point range. It's a Longwood team that, as a whole, they are shooting about 33.5% from three-point range. Michael Crispus, 6.5 boards, 11.5 points per game, and Longwood is going to have the advantage down low. They're a top 30 team with regards to rebound rate. Crispus, along with Simon Zappala and Jonathan Massey, all give you at least least 5.4 rebounds per game, and their top 5 scorers, all but one of them, do give you at least 4.4 rebounds per contest. But I do think that with Winthrop being able to get relatively good production out of Colton Telford, coupled with KJ Doucette, 10 rebounds, 27 points per contest, and the team as a whole being able to shoot about 34.5% from three. This team being able to have multiple guys they're able to facilitate on any given night. As the guys outside of Harrison, they'll do a relatively solid job of being unselfish. I do think that that'll be enough for Winthrop to be able to get the job done here against a Longwood team that has really been, shall we say, backpedaling with regards to their defense. They have now given up at least 72 points in each of their last 6 games, and for this Longwood team, they have held one opponent to fewer than 70 points in their last 10 games. That has been rough for them. So I did set my total more at a 143.5. It's a circumstance where I'm going to be looking at Winthrop in this spot. I did set my total to where I'm going to be taking a look at the under because I do think that Longwood just has a tough time being able to knock down shots themselves. So when I Winthrop on the money line and the under here at 6.585, here at 6.586, UNC Asheville is going to be playing against Charleston Southern. Charleston Southern is an underdog of 12 points. This is on the campus of High Point, and your total on this game is 142 to 142.5. Made Asheville the 12-point favorite myself. So we're going to be looking to see if there's going to be a little bit of line movement on this game. This was an opener of a 12.5, and if we can get back to the 12.5, that'll be my buy point on Charleston Southern. I have to figure that Charleston Southern going to be a little bit fired up as their interim coach, Insan Nimley, someone that was at the program many years ago. He is now the full-time head coach for this team, and they played hard for him. Charleston Southern on the road, they're allowing opponents to shoot about 34% from three-point. Not saying it's amazing, but they've been able to hold their own there for a defense that is well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And down low, they do have someone in Tajay Kelly who gives you 7.5 rebounds per game now. He's going to be no match for Drew Pember. Pember, 8 boards, 20.5 points. He's able to dole out a few assists from 3-point range at 6'10", 6'11", shoots 36.5% from the outside. And UNC Asheville is, as a collective, shooting 37.3% from 3. And they do a nice job of being able to cut off the 3-point arc as well. UNC Asheville, a top 55 team in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. But you've got a Charleston Southern team that they don't necessarily live and die by the 3. And for this Asheville team, they still clock in about 241st in the country in terms of just points allowed on a per possession basis, and you've got 2 reasons for that. 1, they don't do a good job of being able to generate turnovers at all, and for 2, well, this UNC Asheville team has been able to do a nice job of being able to guard the 3-point line. They really do let up on the inside. For UNC Asheville, 185th in the country in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and it's a Charleston Southern team that they themselves do have some of their issues down low. As Charleston Southern, they're checking in with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, around 279th, but I do like some of the guys that this team is able to bring to the table, like RJ Johnson, give you 14 plus points. He's been able to supply the team with about 3 assists per contest. It's a Charleston Southern team that is going to have a little bit of a tough time down low with Nathan McMillan giving you 6 rebounds per game, and Caleb Burgess has done a nice job being able to give out nearly 5 assists per contest for this UNC Asheville team. But you've had a lot of guys unexpectedly be able to step up for the Charleston Southern team as well. You've had Aaron Sumler be able to give you about 14.5 points. He's done a good job of being able to keep things relatively clean for this Charleston Southern team. They only turned the ball over about 12 times per contest, and Charleston Southern honestly has played some of their best basketball when they've been away from home, and this bunch comes in having given up 74 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games, going against a UNC Asheville team that has been a little bit up and down in terms of their defense as well. They've given up north of 78 points in 2 of their last 3 games, and for this UNC Asheville team, they've had a tough time being able to separate in a lot of these games as well. So I'm going to be willing to take 12.5 more here with Charleston Southern, and did set my total at a 144 circumstance where looking at those points, and we'll be looking at the over on this 142, and we wrap things up with 306.587, 306.588. Gardner Webb and Presbyterian do battle from the Cuban Center, as Gardner Webb is a 6.5 point favorite. Your total on this game is 144, and did set my line at 4. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Presbyterian. Presbyterian has been a strange team all season long. We thought that win against Vanderbilt to begin the season was really big for them. Turns out Vanderbilt just stinks this year, but that said, this is a Presbyterian unit that they actually do a better job of being able to guard the 3-point line away from home rather than at home. They allow opponents to shoot 35.6% from 3-point when they're at home. In a road or neutral court environment, this goes down to 33.7%, and they go up against Gardner Webb unit that typically is a top 75 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That is more around 218th, but they're giving up fewer points points per possession when they're away from home rather than at home. And for Presbyterian, they are checking in 268th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're giving up 3 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home, and it's a Gardner-Webb team that they themselves allow opponents to shoot north of 34% from three-point range, and both of these teams really do have their deficiencies on the glass. With Gardner-Webb losing a lot of their big men from last season, their typical advantage that they have on the glass is gone. They're 202nd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Not that this Presbyterian team has been batting down the hatches as well at 254th, but with Presbyterian, you do have a nice outside shooter in Samaje Teal, who's been able to shoot about 40% from three, 13 points per contest. Now, he and Marquise Barnett are really the lone two guys on the roster that do supply you with north of 8 points per game, so it's a little bit of a top-heavy team. But for Presbyterian, they only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. They do a nice job being able to generate a few turnovers as well, and this is a Gardner-Webb unit that has a nice trio in DQ Nicholas, Julian Sawarmo, along Charles Robinson. They've been able to combine for about 38.5 points per contest, and they shoot 34.5% from three, but there's a big reason why I can't take Gardner-Webb on this sort of a line. They do shoot 63% the free throw line. That's a bottom 50 mark in college basketball. Lucas Seabear has been able to step up his scoring a little bit more after being very much a pass-first guy last few seasons. He's now been able to give the team a grand total of 35 points in the last 3 games, shoots 40% from three-point range, so he's been able to come along for the ride a little bit. Gardner-Webb, they turn the ball over about the same as Presbyterian with about 11.4 turnovers per game, but other than Robinson not having a single guy that gives you a north of 4.5 rebounds per game, I do think that that's going to allow a Presbyterian unit that has been able to do a relatively solid job in their own right on defense, giving up now 71 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games. It's got a Webb team that has very much diminished with regards to their defense. That'll allow them to hang in there, and last time these two teams face off, Presbyterian got the 77-75 win at home, despite the fact that Gardner-Webb had shot a much better percentage from three-point range because Gardner-Webb did not make their free throws, and I think we could see something similar here. Set my line at 4, so going to be looking at those points, and did make my total a 144 as well, seeing a 143.5 out there. That's a spot where I'd be taking a look at the overall 143.5 and those points, and that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have 1 or 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, it mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you are able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. Big thanks once again to our good friend Major Matt for joining me in the last segment, and that means I'm coming at you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger. Because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.